Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me today. I am super excited because today I'm having a conversation with Eddie Stone, the CEO and founder of Touchstone Essentials, which I have to say is probably my favorite supplement company. You know, there are so many different products available. You can stand in GNC and just be on overload figuring out what's the best one for you. But Eddie has taken that pain away from us. He started Touchstone Essentials in 2012. It's an all organic, all vegan supplement company, no fillers, no gimmicks. And today we are going to be talking about Touchstone Essentials and why protein is so important and what you can do to get enough essential protein in your diet. So, with no further ado, I bring you Eddie Stone. All right. Hey, Eddie, it's so great to see you. Thank you so much for joining us. It's
Okay,
wonderful to have you here.
glad to be here. Glad to
I
be
know
here.
you've been super busy traveling the globe, expanding Touchstone and making it available to more and more people throughout our worlds. It's just really, really exciting.
I think since the first of the year, it's 7 countries and 20 states. I think we currently actively ship in some 50 countries, and so there's a big appetite for this.
It's amazing. It really is. Well, I guess that's my first question for you is with all the other supplement companies that are out there, what led you to start Touchstone Essentials?
That is the question. I'll try not to make this too extended, but I've got almost a 30-year history in health and supplements, and really starting at the very beginning as a consumer, to then someone involved in really direct sales to consumers, to then
Mhm.
building a team of salespeople, and then participating in a partnership, and then ultimately starting this company. And it's one of those things where early on I realized, for whatever crazy reason, I had sort of a fascination with all of this. In part because I'm really fascinated by the human body, just the way we're able to take oxygen and water and food and make fuel and live and repair and grow. I mean, it's just really, it's a wonderful, genius piece of machinery that I'm quite thankful for. And so early on, I realized that food really played maybe a much bigger role than I certainly thought. I found myself sort of in my late 20s, uh, not as healthy as I should be, cholesterol high, a little more overweight than I ever thought I would, which is maybe not unusual, right? You're pretty active through
Yeah.
school and college, and all of a sudden you're not anymore. And my mom had a little bit of a health scare that served as a wake up call,
Hmm.
and caused me to sort of reflect a little more. And so I became intrigued by these things. But it was interesting for me that the more I learned about supplements, I'm a big fan of supplements because I think it's almost impossible to eat exactly right. I mean, I think you just about got to have a full-time chef, and they've got to have access to an organic farm, and then a purchaser. I mean, there's just complications in eating that exact right diet. And so I think supplements can bridge that gap between where people are and where they want to be. The truth of the matter is, though, that most of the supplements people are consuming, when I say that, unfortunately, I'm talking 99%, are not what people perceive them to be. And that's why, learned fans, scientists, medical doctors of nutrition generally aren't fans of supplements. And that's because of generally what people are consuming. Just a Harvard published piece just a couple of weeks ago talking about just the difference between what people's perceptions are, what's currently commonly
Mhm.
consumed vitamins, everything from adult gummies all the way down to just general multivitamins versus what it means when it's real food. And so
Mhm.
that led us to launch this company in 2012. And early on, I'll be candid, we were a little bit of a lone voice out there. We're part of that sort of early adopter phase, and I want to give some credit to some people all the way back to the 60s that were advocating for greens and greens drinks, but none of that really gained sort of real strength and popularity. But over the past several years, I mean, look, um, Amazon just bought Whole Foods, right? Probably not a better way to sort of identify this whole concept and idea going mainstream. So we believe there's an opportunity for us because we can provide some education to people,
Mhm.
gives them a chance to really understand who they're working with. We have there's not a lot of distance between us and our consumers. And so we're not some large corporate monolith. And so if we can spend some time educating people on the value of doing the best they can from a dietary standpoint, and then the role that supplements can play, we have found already in our short history that that's high demand. People are looking for that partnership of education and a product to consume.
Absolutely. I just spent the last 5 days at a Qigong center in New Mexico. And we did have a full-time chef. It was my dream diet. And I've been studying nutrition for 20 years, but what really hit home for me on that trip was how important good organic, real nourishing food is, not only for my physical body, but for my emotional and mental and spiritual body as well. I had so much clarity while I was there. And I'm sure it was a combination of the people and the Qigong that we were doing, but the food played a major part in that. And you're right, we can't eat that way all the time. It's just, and the soils are so depleted as it is, that just the amount of iron or calcium that a pound of spinach used to have 50, 60, 70 years ago is just not the same anymore.
Yeah, I mean, let's face it, there's just a lot of things working against us, right? Over commercialization of farmland without proper crop rotations. I mean, you could do a whole Zoom call on that. Might only be you and I that have interest in it, but there's a lot of places you can go with this. And so when I think of a food like you've just described, one of the issues we face is that, to me, food isn't just nutrition, it's pleasure, and it's family, and it's love, right? And there's social side to it. But we live in this hyper demanding society where food really for most people is just a fuel stop. I think people know, right? We could hand out a quiz and people get it, right? When they're having a meal passed to them through a drive-through window in a styrofoam container, they're under no illusions about what that means, but they've made this deal with the devil, so to speak, and it satisfies them currently from a hunger standpoint, if not a nutrition standpoint probably, but, and so it's a conflicted issue for us. And we, at the same time, it's interesting, not only do we not want to invest the time in prep, or even the time to get what we need to prep, we also get a little confused on cost. And so we wind up really spending more on personal health care than would be necessary, probably if we just spent a little more in advance on foods. There's all kinds of issues at work here.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, one of the reasons I feel so confident recommending Touchstone to people is not just because of the results and benefits that people like me see when I'm taking the product, but I really feel like integrity is the foundation for everything Touchstone Essential does. I mean, there are no gimmicks, there are no fillers. Everyone I've ever talked to at Touchstone genuinely cares about the people that you are serving, that we are serving. And why? So I would love to know, why has that been so important to you in building Touchstone?
Part of it is because this all came out of almost a family setting. In this case, they were family from a business relationship standpoint, people I'd worked with for a long time. And when deciding to put this company together, there's no way I could do it without them. And so when we put together the formulas, when we think about the sourcing and the information we want to pass along, even things like building the FAQs or making the site user-friendly, we think of ourselves and our own UX or user friendliness with it, how our family's going to use it. My kids use these products, my family, my parents, my brother, my sister. And so for us, it's what would we serve in our own household, to ourselves and our family, and nothing, if it's not qualified for that, then it's not qualified for our customers, because really they're our family too. So for us, it's an extension of this idea of business, family, social, community. They're all together. And you know what, that invites a whole lot of commitment to transparency and integrity with what you do.
Well, do you mind touching a little bit on why you decided to offer Touchstone Essentials and the direct marketing model instead of being out at GMC? I mean, I know we could spend a whole hour on this as well, but I know that I had a lot of bias against this model until I actually started learning about its benefits. And I thought, oh, wow, this actually does serve the people who use it and buy it.
Yeah, and some of that is because my experience in direct sales has been really positive. I come out of a traditional business background. My granddad was a builder, and my dad was a builder, and he and my brother are still successful builders today. And when I say that, I'm not talking about on these grandiose scales. I'm talking from apartment buildings to houses or whatever it happens to be. And so this was a foreign idea to me when I was first introduced to it. But as a fundamentally an entrepreneur, the chance to start a business without the traditional financial risk and responsibilities, without having to have a special education or license, basically just with some desire, is very appealing to me.
Mm-hmm.
If a person has a entrepreneurial instinct, even though in our country there's modest barriers, there are still barriers, right? Most of them have to do with capital. Most of them have to do with the fact that they require a lot of time, right? Even if you bought a small power washing franchise or whatever it has to be, everything is really directly tied to your labor and production. Networking, if done right, using the assets of the company, affords a person a leverage of their time that you generally only associate it with investing capital so that your money works for you, right? And here, your time works for you, but it's got a leveraged component to it. So I'm a big fan of it in that way. And I also like the fact that it does create this direct dialogue. So someone's a member with our company. In order to have a successful conversation with someone, they got to learn a little bit themselves. And so there's some learning as you go. Now, it's not for everybody. And our business is built to accommodate where a person's interests are. But if a person's an entrepreneur and they want to make a little extra coffee money a month, or mad money, or house money, or salary money, that opportunity exists for them. We're giving them tools, all kinds of electronic tools at no additional cost. And then sort of timing is really on their side. We're in a trending environment. But if someone just wants to improve the health and nutrition of their family, we've got a blog environment, teach them about food and prep and what to buy and things of that kind, and access to products that are super healthy for them. So it's the fact that it offers such a range. And then maybe the other side of it is, if you just really think about today's world, trying to connect with people, traditional media doesn't have that figured out. If you look at a local newspaper anymore, it's thinner and thinner and thinner, maybe even hard to justify that it's printed. Magazines are struggling. And so communicating with people in this kind of direct fashion, really a social network, what it amounts to, I think it's actually quite brilliant. Maybe the time is now more than ever before. So, there's a lot of things that go into it for me. But at the end of the day, it's about the choices that we're able to give someone here that maybe had we chosen, if we'd chosen a traditional brick and mortar environment, we certainly wouldn't be able to offer people the entrepreneurial type opportunities.
Right. It would just be concentrating on, revenue and profit and all of that. Instead of, because what I feel Touchstone creates is community. And that's something that is really dissolving in our current society. It's community through electronics and social media, but not through that face-to-face relationship building community that was much more prevalent.
Yeah. No, I agree. And we just wouldn't be able to do that otherwise. And so this, and look, the U economy is exploding, right? I think the numbers are that by 2020, 75 million adults in the US will be involved with some kind of secondary meaningful enterprise, whether it's driving for Uber, something like that, which is great, but you got to use an asset and you got to have an asset. And so you can do things like Etsy, where you're sort of leveraging your art, but here you're leveraging a trend, a topic that's real, it's relevant. And so I'm a big fan. I like our direction here.
The last I saw was something like 10% of out-of-pocket healthcare income or healthcare spent in the United States was for supplements and for natural, complementary, and integrative modalities, that people are willing to pay out of pocket for it. But I do hope one of my goals is that this video can serve as a resource for Touchstone's members when they have questions about really what I really want to dive into now is into the protein, the importance of protein, because what I find in my experience as a nurse and a naturopath is that a lot of people recognize the benefits of things like vitamin C and calcium, but they really don't understand why getting enough protein every day is important. You know, like most people know that calcium and magnesium and vitamin D are important to our bones, but they don't realize that 30% of our bone matrix is protein. And if you don't have enough protein, your bones are going to be weak. You know, our genes can't express themselves without protein. Our cells can't communicate without protein. Like our bodies would literally fall apart without protein. And in healthcare, we see people's bodies deteriorating because they don't have enough of the protein building blocks they need to stay strong. And then the protein sources they do end up choosing, like fast food hamburger products, you know, they're full of antibiotics and toxins and chemical additives. And then there are other situations where we need more protein, like a vegan or vegetarian diet. It's hard to stay on top of how much protein and how to get the protein. Or after you've broken a bone or had surgery or you've got a skin wound, like a diabetic ulcer, you got to be getting protein because that wound is sucking it all out. And one of the things that can be really confusing that people come to me all the time is say, hey, there are so many different types of protein supplements on the market. You know, so can you, as you were developing the organic super protein, can you talk about some of the different types of protein, like the soy and the whey base and all those different things that you saw out in the market, and what some of the issues you see with these types of protein supplements?
Sure, and let me maybe afford me just a moment to back up and sort
Yeah,
of position protein to just add on to what you're saying, because it's important for people to realize you got to think of macronutrients, and here we're talking about carbohydrates, fats, and proteins. You got to have some balance. And if you're on a diet that tells you to all carbohydrates or all fats or all proteins, just know that that's not long term, because your body really craves and wants balance. And so you need to think of protein in that same way. Protein, just to kind of make sure everybody's up to speed, you'll hear amino acids. And amino acids essentially are protein, right?
right.
That's sort of the more specific scientific term. And there are 20 amino acids, 11 of which we make, and 9 of which we don't. And so they're called essential. And so that's why you have to have calories in your diet sourced from protein to get to those others, those other 9 essential amino acids. Now, the trick is that there are a lot of myths associated with protein. And maybe the earliest one was in the 1950s. And I'm 54 years old. I'm not 100 years old, so I don't have complete memory of that moment in time. But in the 1950s, the World Health Organization, to the UN, for whatever reason, sort of decided that we were protein deficient as a world, so a global population. Maybe this was coming off the heels of World War II or whatever it was. And so we had this sort of first real myth in the protein world of thinking that somebody that, say, weighed 150 pounds needed to have as much as 100 to, say, 110 grams of protein per day, which is way off base. It creates a lot of pressure on the kidneys and liver to metabolize. There's even some belief that that type of excess amount of protein could make you more vulnerable to various types of cancers. And there's plenty of books written on that. And so that kind of was brought back into pulled back into sort of normalcies in the 1970s. And now most places you look, they're going to say, hey, if you're about 150 pounds, you probably should be getting between 50, 54 grams of protein, which is a much more reasonable amount. The other piece, though, that's maybe more interesting to me, and I'll bet you heard this growing up because a lot of people do, is that, well, plants don't have all the amino acids, and so you've got to go through an exercise of protein combining to get to the amino acids, that the only place where all those essential amino acids exist is in animal protein. And that came out of a book written in 1971. I think that the name of the book was Diet for a Small Planet. Just one little line in there, and there's a lot of written history about this that sort of sent people off in this direction. But the truth of the matter is, all plants have the requisite essential amino acids in them. They all have them in there. It's just that the levels vary wildly from plant to plant, but also comparing animal to plant-based proteins. But in the real world, in reality, you're not going to become protein deficient if you just ate plants, right? That's just not going to be the case. Now, if you didn't try to be conscious of having some plants that were a little, say, higher than protein than others, it'd be just like having an out of balance diet where it was just all meat or something like that. And so for me, I think about, particularly as we get a little bit older, why people maybe shy away from protein, and then particularly protein supplements. And a lot of it has to do with, for example, digestion. Protein supplements or even excess consumption of proteins at mealtime often leads people to having digestive issues, bowel issues. This may be the first time where somebody starts to jump into using antacids on a regular basis and not helping themselves out from that standpoint. And so for me, it only made sense for us, since I do recognize we've got a go-go lifestyle in society, and having a convenient, good tasting protein to use to replace breakfast or lunch when there's no time is valuable, right? This is that role that supplements can play in my mind. And so for us, it only made sense to try to do that with the most digestible product possible. Well, that meant for us that it was going to be a plant-based product, right? It's sort of one of those first little rules. And then we also wanted to include some sprouted proteins, right? To further sort of help a person include in our formulation natural enzymes. We've also got some probiotics, those other things that we do. And then to use a variety, in part because that's maybe smart to just get a variety of amino acids, but also because of taste. You know, if you've got a protein supplement, there's sort of a supposition there. A person's going to use it day in and day out. You want to think about variety and mouth fatigue and taste fatigue and these kinds of things. And so, you know, that's the reason we chose to go with a plant-based protein. Mm-hmm. Digestibility. Also, if you can compare animal proteins to plant proteins, animal proteins, while they are obviously high in protein itself, they generally lack nutrients. You know, a beef steak or a piece of chicken is not rich in phytochemicals, right? It doesn't have all the.
It's going to have other types of nutrients, you know, the iron and the B12 and things like that instead that the body is looking for.
Yeah, you definitely hope that it's got the minerals. However, depending upon how it was commercially farmed or whatever, that may not be quite as true as we want it to be, right?
Absolutely. Animal farming has been horribly hijacked by an industry that does not care about the welfare of human beings and our planet.
And if you're looking at, if you can I think turning a hog these days is less than 75 days. A broiler chicken, I think, is less than 50 days. I could be a little bit off there, but the bottom line is that time for maturation and grains and things from the soil that are rich in nutrients to get there. There's just a whole lot of things there that can be challenging. Yeah. Setting aside anything ethical or environmental, just from a nutritional standpoint. So only made sense for us to go with a plant-based protein. And then we also see challenges with soy. Not all soy, but most soy, at least grown in this country, cannot be said to be non-GMO. Probably 95% of what's grown is GMO. So it's been genetically modified. And then there are plenty of people in our society that are getting way too much estrogen. And so we know that soy can play a role in sort of elevating that. And then it also can be problematic from an allergy standpoint. It's definitely not a low allergen plant material. So we chose to stay away from soy, go with simple plants that we understand, pea, hemp, quinoa. There's just a lot of things we do there. And what it does is it invites alkalinity to the body instead of like whey protein, which is very acidic. You know, whey protein is an interesting story because the popularity of Greek yogurts in our country, so it's one of these side effect sort of issues, has created an incredible dearth of whey protein because a byproduct of that process is whey protein. They almost have to give it away because if they put it in the ground, it's really almost an environmental disaster, the way that it creates an acidity in the soil and destroys it, and for intents and purposes of trying to grow something. And so whey protein is another one to sort of think about, just simply considering digestion, allergens, the environment, and all these things. And so for us, the only answer was to go with a plant-based protein, which is what we've done. And we just feel like that for this world today, and what we know about the environment and society, and the fact that there's probably an overabundance of animal protein that's eaten, giving people a break. And as I'm on here today, and I don't want to confuse anybody, I'm not a vegan. I eat probably principally a vegan diet, but that doesn't mean on occasion there's not some meat in my diet. But I think that trying to invite some balance to that with plant-based proteins is really part of that goal set for us. And here's what's fantastic for us. We have found plenty of high level lifting, resistance training athletes performing at the highest levels. They're using plant-based proteins exclusively. And so we know, just looking at personal performance people have, that this really, we believe, is that direction where most people, if they just want to have an overall good health experience, they need to focus their time and energy.
Yeah, well, two things that come to mind is with whey protein is that it's not the same protein. Again, like what we have done to farming in this country is not the same protein it used to be. We've been breeding cows to get a certain level of fat or protein or this and that, and now suddenly, and then you talk about all the antibiotics in the environment that are messing with our gut flora, and suddenly you have a whole new generation of people who cannot tolerate dairy products at all, and specifically not the protein. And so to have a plant-based option available is so crucial. And again, because you're standing, imagine just even standing at the shelves at Whole Foods, and how many different protein products do they have? And it can be really, really, really confusing. And then, our body, the reason we have our stomach acid primarily is not only as an immune protectant. So when a bug gets in there, the acid just eats it up, but also because that's what we need to break down that protein, animal or vegetable. And so when we're stressed out, we're not going to make that, because we're running around, right? Kids have to get to school and we got to get to work and the bills are due and life is crazy. If we don't have enough of that stomach acid, the protein's not going to get broken down into the right amino acids. So when it gets into the small intestine is going to throw its hands up and go, what am I supposed to do with this? So again, to have that balance in there that the stomach can kind of play around with and go, oh, okay, I'll break this one down. Okay, I can do this, instead of just, having steak, breakfast, lunch, dinner, which can be very hard to digest for a lot of people. And again, it touches on so many different things in our world, but I do find that when you have an easy, especially in the morning, right? I know so many people who make smoothies in the morning, myself included, because it's easy. I can make it the night before, grab it on my way to work, or, drink it before I go. And it's not going to give me a stomach ache. I'm not going to feel it sitting in there like a brick in the morning going, I shouldn't have eaten that for breakfast.
And
so I guess that
piece
kind of
of this, that's a piece, let me just say real quickly, that people don't pay attention to, is that you're taking the protein. The protein can do a few things. It'll help you feel full, right? Should help you with some appetite control. But if it's the right kind of protein, it digests quickly enough that you've got some energy left over. And people don't think about it, but most estimates are about 40% of our daily consumption of energy, unless there's some kind of extreme exercise or athletics involved, just comes from digestion, right? So anything we can do to make that process a little easier, we're going to have more energy throughout the day without another cup of coffee, just because we've eaten right.
Right. And so I guess this kind of leads me to my next question is, what made you decide to create the organic super protein and add it to the Touchstone Essentials line?
Really realizing at the end of the day, and surveying our members, they live at a pace that if they can have one meal they really are thoughtful about a day, they're winning. If they have two meals they're thoughtful about a day, then they're on vacation, right? And so we need to make it convenient, and we need to make it taste good, because they've generally got kids and stuff. And so that was part of also just to make sure it tasted good, it mixed well, and it fit into people's lifestyles. Let's meet them where they are. And I believe we've achieved that.
Absolutely. Well, I was going to say, in my opinion, I feel like the organic super protein is really the best protein supplement available for for quality, for variety of protein sources. I mean, you're talking superfoods, the chia, the hemp, the The sprouting makes that protein so much more accessible, the digestibility, the taste, and then the price is reasonable too. I mean, you look at some of those protein supplements and you're going to be spending $80 to $100 a month minimum for some of those products that aren't necessarily as good as, as easily digestible, et cetera, as the organic super protein. So I would love it if you could share with us, some of the decision making process behind why you use the ingredients that you put in Touchstone. I mean, in the organic super protein, we talked about it a little bit, but if you can go into a little more detail.
Sure. Well, there's a few things there, and to be conscious, to be dollar conscious, just also remember we have good pricing for a single tub. We got better pricing for a 3-pack and family pricing for a 5-pack. So we do realize, how these things go and the consumption levels family have. So we try to make it as affordable as possible. The pea protein, pea is popular because its balance of essential amino acids is really quite remarkable.
Mm-hmm.
And for us, we can go out and buy a U.S. Grown pea, organic pea, and process it here, which isn't generally the rule. Most of the time, peas that are harvested in the States actually go abroad into Asia to be processed. There's all kind of other issues going on there, and so we felt like that supply was good. It was solid, and combining it with that sprouted rice, it mixes well. I mean, so some of that motivation was the amino acid profile, the maintenance of micronutrients in the way that the pea and the rice are both harvested and protected, and we could make it taste good. And so, we're trying to think of the convenience side, the taste side, but also the nutritional profile. And then the other things like the hemp, which is renowned for its property, the millet and the chia, all of those things sort of just worked out to be the right recipe. And we probably, there's 3 or 4 sources that didn't make the final cut. The recipe just wasn't quite what we wanted from a taste and a profile and a mixability standpoint. So it's more than one thing. We invest time in something called mouthfeel. We want to see what people's impressions are when it first crosses the lips, and then what's the lingering taste of things. So we've got a lot of dynamics. I won't necessarily give away all of our little internal secrets, but there's a lot of things going on there that help us sort of shape that up. Nutrition first, solid sourcing, transparency in those processes, obviously just as important, and then mixability and convenience.
Mm-hmm. Wow. How long did it take you from the time you knew you started researching making a protein powder to when organic super protein was actually released? How long was that time period?
Well, I'll tell you, I could probably argue that the basics of thinking about the pea and the fermented rice are 10-year ideas and just trying to find the right people. But deciding to release this formulation and all, about a 24-month cycle just to get really specific. But for a long time, I knew we wanted to do something. Even before this company was opened, I wanted to do something with a plant-based protein. I knew that pea would be important, and I knew that rice would be important. And so it's, it didn't happen overnight for us.
Wow. Yeah. You can tell because it wasn't a release and then an oops.
No.
So share with us some of the feedback you've received from Touchstone members about the organic super protein.
Well, one of the best parts, because I know that this is such a struggle with people, is weight control. There's so many people, and let's face it, I mean, everywhere you turn, you've got convenient calories. They're just sort of waiting for you, and so it's easy, particularly the more sort of less physically demanding life becomes, the more modern conveniences we have that just mean we don't have to do anything. I mean, now you don't even have to make a trip to the grocery store, right? You can hit your button and somebody will drop your groceries off too, right? So we're just getting to the point where I worry about us being stuck on the couch, right, for every aspect of life. And so giving people something that tastes good, it's nutritious and satisfying to mix with the berries or the greens in the morning to give them a good kickstart, start the metabolism off. It's a weight control. And we hear that a lot. And in fact, for someone listening that would like to maybe really give their body a break, I call it the 10-day vacation from ultra processed foods, right? If you really want to give yourself sort of a kickstart for the spring or the summer, take 10 days off from ultra processed foods and replace 2 meals a day with our protein mixed with greens and something else that you enjoy. Maybe it's almond milk. You'll be amazed. And 10 days is probably long enough to sacrifice 2 meals. People begin to miss it at that point. But it's a little bit of a transformation program we see. And I think most people probably stunned with how they'll feel. And, it's not even just really the weight loss in terms of measuring yourself on a scale. Your clothes will just fit better.
Mm-hmm.
You have less inflammation because you took that break from the ultra processed food. So probably number one on the list is just the people that are talking to us about the weight that they've lost. And then second would be our athletic community, which is really one of the faster growing parts of our business, are people that are looking for protein for performance purposes and talking to us about what they see from a muscle recovery standpoint, muscle growth. We had a gentleman this past weekend that hit a personal record at an international kettlebell
Wow.
competition. When I say that, I mean a very serious environment, right? Where it's a 10-minute endurance of a clean and lift on these kettlebells that just weigh too much.
Yes.
And so to hear him talk about his ability to amp up what he was doing this past 6 months using the protein, right? Gives us some satisfaction. Hey, there's quite a few needs that people have, and we're meeting them. So it's fun for us to see that. And then we get good comments about the taste, which is, if it doesn't taste good, most people won't use it day in and day out. So that
Right.
becomes
What's the point? Well, I'll let you in on a little secret. I'm actually coming up with a 30-day gentle detox
great.
using the organic super protein and a couple of the other Touchstone products. So I'll let you know when it's been tested out, and I always have a few guinea pigs who are willing to go along with me. So once it's ready, we'll let you guys know. And so you can
Please
make it
do.
available to your members. And because it really does make such a huge difference when you give yourself that break from the processed foods. And so there are some processed foods that we don't think of as processed, but really, if it's coming out of a bag or a can, or a package, it's probably been processed in some way that doesn't serve the integrity of the food. I mean, I know your manufacturing processes, again, it's that integrity, keeping the integrity of the food source alive, not sacrificing it for the sake of convenience or shelf life.
No question. Food, this is true of our products, things need to spoil. If they don't spoil, you're probably not eating the right things, right? If it can just sit forever, it's probably not a good idea. So there's a lot that goes into what you just said, for sure.
Yeah, which is wonderful. Well, any final thoughts for the people watching today?
Well, one, thank you. We have really enjoyed a lot of sunshine in the last couple of years, and growth, and it's being driven by word of mouth and people's good thoughts. And so we appreciate that. We appreciate your loyalty and connection to us. Let me just, if it's okay,
Yeah.
for your listeners, let me just offer a coupon code, if that's all right,
Yes,
for
thank you.
your new folks, your first time customers. Number one, just know everything is unconditionally money back guaranteed. Empty canister, bottle container. I think it's a 30-day guarantee. We have a AAA rating, Better Business Bureau. So you're going to have a good experience from that standpoint. Even if you don't like the product, we'll still make it a good experience for you. But if you'd like to try it, we have a code HEALTHY10, and that'll give you an additional 10% discount on already good prices, and give you a chance to see if this is for you. And then let us know. We do a lot of work on developing reviews that are all managed and handled by third parties to keep it transparent and make sure we're looking at the real information. And so as you use it, let us hear from you. It just helps us get better.
Wonderful. I love it. So everybody, I will, after I say goodbye to Eddie, I will let you know about a discount code and website and all the places you can go to explore and learn more about Touchstone Essential products. But in the meantime, Eddie, thank you so much for your time. I really, really appreciate it. The more we can do to spread the knowledge and that information, I feel is so empowering for people to be able to take that first positive step. And if that can be through a smoothie, you guys, I'll post recipes on the Facebook group, the Wellness Oasis, so you guys can kind of explore there. I'll tell you, my personal favorite is using coconut milk, a tablespoon of coconut oil, the organic super protein, and a little bit of frozen pineapple and a half an avocado. It is like manna from heaven.
There you go. It's almost like a pina colada. I like
It
it.
is, right? Except with a little avocado too to get some of that fat and all that goodness from the avocado and the coconut. So there's so much you can do with these things. But I really appreciate your time, Eddie. Um, and yeah, I'm just, I'm really excited about where Touchstone is going. And I think the organic super protein is such a huge part of that.
No, thank you, Jennifer. Thanks,
Thank
everybody. Till next time.
Bye. Thank
Bye.
you. Okay, you guys, I hope you found that helpful. Eddie is such an amazing resource. I love talking with him. So I know you're all dying to get your hands on some organic super protein. You can go to the website www.oasis.thegoodinside.com. Again, that's www.thegoodinside.com. And I'll be sure to post that below in the YouTube video so that you can just click right on the link from there. The discount code that Eddie was talking about, it's 10% off for first-time buyers. You can use it at any time. It won't expire. And that code is HEALTHY10, HEALTHY10. And you can enter that promo code in when you purchase the product. Also, come on over to our Facebook group, The Wellness Oasis, because I'm always posting the latest promo codes available for Touchstone Essentials. And we'd love to have you in the group. It's a place where you can find your tribe, people who are also interested in healthy living and what are some of the alternatives to some of the options that we're given in the Western medical world. I also post lots of recipes in there. If you have any questions at all, you are welcome to send me an email. My email is jennifer@earthbasedmedicine.com. And you can read my blog and podcast and find all sorts of juicy information over on my website, which is www.earthbasedmedicine.com. But to get a hold of that organic super protein, again, that website is www.oasis.thegoodinside.com. Also, if you're interested in building your business with Touchstone Essentials, as Eddie was talking about, if you've got that spirit of entrepreneurship and you want to share Touchstone Essentials with people, please do reach out to me via email or Facebook, and I would love to help you on that journey. Thank you so much for joining us. Love having you here. Love having you learn about this. You know this is my passion, to share this information with you so that you can be fully empowered and really take back your health. It's going to take all of us to revolutionize healthcare. All right, you guys, I will see you the next time. Have a great day.